Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The Awesome C.O.D.Y. As usual, I'm your host, C.O.D.Y, and today we are continuing March's theme of massive movie monsters. And today we are talking about Godzilla and Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So, if this is your first jump into this month, first week of the month, we talked about Pacific Rim and Pacific Rim Uprising, as well as Pacific Rim The Black, which is the animated one that hasn't come out yet. Then the second week we talked about Cloverfield Universe. That includes Cloverfield, 10 Cloverfield Lane, and Cloverfield Paradox. Last week we talked about the Meg giant shark movie. And then, or I should say massive shark movie. This week we're talking about Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters. And next week we'll be talking about Kong Skull Island. All in preparation for Godzilla vs. Kong. That will be out in theaters here in the United States March 31st, as well as HBO Max at the same time. So you can watch it on the big screen or the not-so-big screen, depending on how you watch your HBO Max, of course. So Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters. Godzilla, of course, the 2014 movie that... we'll say rebooted the Godzilla franchise here in the United States, at least, because of the lackluster, albeit shit-tastic version of the movie they did in 1998 with Matthew Broderick and the iguana, known as Godzilla then, and all the iguana babies. Not a great movie, by the way, if you haven't understood my... thought behind that. So real quickly, as fast as I possibly can, I'm going to go through the makers of Godzilla and the makers of Godzilla King of the Monsters and who's in it. It's a long list of people. You would think it wouldn't be that long because of, the fact that, it's about giant monsters. There are quite a few different people who are in these movies. Not so much the main, I would say, Godzilla. You have obviously Godzilla, and you have the Mutos, which I'll get to in a little bit. You have a cast of characters. In the first one, the list is not very long. It's roughly about 6 or 7 people. Only 3 of them move over to the second one, and then they bring in a whole slew of others, and there's a reason why, which in the first movie, I'll get to that a little later if I remember. But basically, the thought is, in the first movie, there is a lot of human story in it. There's a lot of that in the second one. The biggest difference between the first one and the second one is there's not a very large secondary or, main plot of people, of humans. There's a very much, like you say, there's a very large human component and story all around the humans in the first one. And the second one, that takes kind of a back burner, but also the humans are a little more prominent in this movie. They're not just squishy things on the ground that Godzilla and Mutos just wreak havoc on. This the world has evolved, and I'll get to that in a little bit later. But the squishy people are always the worst part about these movies because, as I said before, unlike Pacific Rim, they're not just fodder. In Pacific Rim, obviously, they're humans are fighting the monsters or the kaijus with giant man-made machines. In Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters, there's a different aspect, and I'll get to that in a little bit here. So Godzilla from 2014, like I said, is a reboot of the Toho's Godzilla franchise, and it's the 30th film in that franchise. Godzilla King of the Monsters is actually the 35th film in that franchise. you may be asking yourself, well, wait a minute, if that's 30 and this is 35, where are the other 4? So the other 4 are actually movies made in the universe that is Godzilla, or the franchise that is Godzilla, but have nothing to do with the Godzilla or MonsterVerse, which I'll get into in a little bit here. Actually, right before I go into cast and crew of the both movies, I'll go a little bit over the MonsterVerse, as it's called, from Legendary. So there's essentially, like I said, there's 35 different films. The most recent being hold on, let me pull up the list of them here. So the most recent, so American movies we're not going to talk about those. We're talking about the other ones. In 2016, Shin Godzilla was released by Funimation. It is a Japanese movie about Godzilla. Then there's Godzilla Planet of the Monsters that came out. That was part of the animated Netflix films, which have dated 3. Are they films or are they TV shows? I can't remember. That's a film. That's a film. Yeah, they're all films. And I haven't watched any of them. They look good. The animation looks cool. Godzilla looks pretty cool in them. But those ones don't have to do with the Godzilla movies made in here in America for American audiences. It is known as the Ryōei era, I think is how you pronounce it. I could be wrong about that. That started in 2016 with Shin Godzilla, which I watched the trailer for, which looked pretty amazing in its own right. And you can check it out. I'm pretty sure it's available pretty much anywhere. But it's more of a traditional approach to it. It still uses CG, but they have motion capture and they use green screen and all that fun stuff like that. Much they do with the newer Godzillas as well. So you have that one. You have the 3 animated movies via Netflix. They came out in 2017, and 2 of them came out in 2018. And then you have the American films, like I said. Roland Emmerich did the atrocious version in 1998 with Matthew Broderick and a bunch of other people who no one should ever watch. And if you want to hear about that movie, there's an episode of this here podcast called Torture Theater Godzilla 1998 that you can, or not this here podcast, the main podcast. You can listen as you can hear Joe, Mike, and myself relive that movie after watching it after several years. So if you want to hear about that, head on and search for that one. It should be up on the site. Well, not so much the website, because the website's not nearly up to date on older stuff, but it is, believe, available through if you search for the podcast on there. It's called Torture Theater Godzilla 1998. You should be able to find it. Anyways, then you have the movie we're talking about right now, which is Godzilla, released in 2014, directed by Gareth Edwards, and I will go into that one in a minute. Then there's the other movie we're talking about today, which is Godzilla King of the Monsters, came out in 2019, directed by Michael Daughtry, who I'll go over a little bit. I've talked about him before. And then, of course, this is all stemming from the fact that releasing this year, 2021, on March 31st here in the United States, and March 26th, I believe, in Japan and other regions, and available here in the United States, at least I know of, on HBO Max, as well as in theaters, select theaters, of course, including IMAX screens. If you are lucky enough to be near a theater, I do recommend seeing it that way. Not because I've seen it, but usually these movies are a spectacular thing to watch on a big screen with good audio, and I'm hoping this one does the same thing. But anyways, that is them. Godzilla vs. Kong, of course, that movie, I forgot to mention the title yet again, and that one's directed by Adam Wingard, and I don't know too much about the movie itself, because, well, it's not out, and there's a lot of things. There's quite a few things up in the air we don't really know about. There's some spoilers that came out, which I will not talk about here, and I won't talk about my theories about it, because they're not really solid, because there's there's a lot of things they're not showing us, and I know that for a fact, so I'm not going to really delve into that. But he's done a lot of things. The big things you know Adam Wingard for. The movie You're Next. The Guest, which if you haven't seen is a pretty spectacular movie with Dan Stevens in it that came out in 2014. He did the reboot of Blair Witch. Then he did the unfortunate remake, not his fault, of our American remake or loosely based on Japanese animation of Death Note, which actually had a pretty cool version of the creatures in it. But I can't think of his name right now. But anyways, and then of course Godzilla vs. Kong. He directed that one as well as other things he's done. And actually, I talked about Adam. I forgot about this. I did talk about him a little bit because he did the show Outcast based on he did 3 episodes of the show Outcast based on the Robert Kirkman comic book of the same name, which I talked about in the. Was it during Robert Kirkman's or was it Halloween stuff? I don't know. Or scary comic books. I can't remember which one it was, but it's there. But anyways, that's for another day. That's Adam Wingard, or Wingard. I'm not too sure actually how you say his name. But anyways, that is the franchise. 35 different Godzilla movies, including 4 live-action United States movies, 3 of which are current MonsterVerse movies. So speaking of MonsterVerse movies, so you may be thinking to yourself, well, what the hell is the MonsterVerse? So the MonsterVerse is a set of movies based in the it's referred to as the Legendary Entertainment's MonsterVerse or Legendary's MonsterVerse. And they do a pretty cool thing because they actually use the M logo from Monarch, which is a group that has to do with these movies. In it, they actually use that as the logo for MonsterVerse, which is pretty cool. But anyways, so MonsterVerse is made up of, right now, 4 movies, 3 of them which are out, 1 which is what spawned me talking about monstrous movies, massive monstrous movies this month. And they are Godzilla, 2014, Kong Skull Island, which I'll be talking about next week, Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I'm talking about this week as well, and of course the movie that I've been talking about these movies for is Godzilla vs. Kong. So these 4 movies, which depending on how well it does, could spawn more. I don't know. Well, I do know one thing that's part of this, that essentially is not part of the movies, but is in the universe. It's called Skull Island, and it is on gonna be an animated show on Netflix, and I believe it's made by the same people who made the 3 Godzilla animated movies that are on there as well, which is Powerhouse Animation Studios and Netflix Animation. I believe, actually, I can tell you right now if that's who they are, because I think that's who it is. Nope, I was wrong. It is not. I don't know what they've done then. Well, that's right. This is the people who made Castlevania. That's what it was. So Castlevania is an animated show on Netflix, based on the video game Castlevania, and then made into a pretty rad, super violent animated show. That's why I know the name of that. I didn't realize that. They're also worked on a bunch of video games throughout history. That actually I've played a bunch of those actually. But yeah, so that's Powerhouse Animation Studios. So Skull Island was announced this year, in January of this year, 2021. It is essentially it's a set of series within the MonsterVerse. It is about a shipwrecked characters who are basically trying to escape from Skull Island and all of its prehistoric monsters, including, I'm going to guess, Kong. When is this set? What time frame? I don't know. I'm not too sure if it even links directly to these movies, other than the fact it takes place on the Skull Island version that is from this version of Kong inside the MonsterVerse. But that's all we really know about it so far. Well, it's also the project will be written by Brian Duffield, he's co-producing or co-executive producing with Jacob Robinson. And I don't know too much about Brian Duffield. I'm looking at the little bio right now because I didn't look it up before. Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on there. Did Blacklist stuff. I don't know. Well, Underwater, which I didn't watch, is the one with Kristen Stewart. Is that right? Kristen Stewart's in that one. About monsters underwater. The Babysitter, which is that shitty Netflix one by McG? That movie's fucking terrible. I never watched the second one because the first one was fucking atrocious. Anyhow, that's again something for another day, which I'll probably talk about next week when I talk about Kong Skull Island. Anyhow, so back to this super long list of who made these movies. So Godzilla 2014 was a movie directed by Garth Edwards. Garth Edwards, of course, I have talked about on here before. Actually, have I talked about him on this podcast? I don't think I actually have talked about him on this podcast. Basically, Garth Edwards is a director and a writer and a cinematographer. He first off made a movie where he in 2010, which got him some notoriety. It is a movie he shot guerrilla style. It is his feature debut movie, and it basically has essentially two main characters. One played by Scoot McNairy. I think it's Scoot. I don't know if it's Scott, if it's supposed to be. Anyways, him and Whitney Abel, who are in this world where essentially monsters have shown up in the world. I'll talk about the movie another time. I have too much to talk about in this episode to talk about this, but check it out. You can watch it. I want to say the first one, watch. The second one, don't waste your time on because it wasn't really made by him. It was the studio made it outside not without him. He's executive producing on it because he made the property for the first one, but it's not as good as the first one is. And if you watch it, or if I sometime talk about it on here with more detail, you understand, check it out. It's not the best movie in the world, but it's pretty fucking awesome. And it was made for less than $500,000, which is ridiculous, but it's pretty dope. Anyhow, he also made Godzilla in 2014, and then he directed Rogue One, Star Wars story, which was the first of the non-Skywalker driven movies, even though it has to do with those movies, just like the Solo, a Star Wars movie, did, because our Star Wars story, because it was based in the same with characters that interact with Skywalkers. Anyhow, so he made that movie, and then he did a couple other things. He made a cameo in Last Jedi, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's about it. Hopefully he does some more stuff. I don't know what else he has on his plate coming up. Hopefully he's going to do some more stuff because he's an awesome guy, and I think he's just at the tip of his career, and hopefully he's going to keep making dope stuff. Starring in Godzilla, you have Aaron Taylor Johnson, who plays Ford Brody, who is the son of the character played by Bryan Cranston, and of course his mother, by the name of his mother, who is I can't talk, is played by Juliette Bianch. I'm not too sure her name. This also has Elizabeth Olsen in it, who is right now obviously mostly famous for playing Wanda in WandaVision as well as the Marvel movies. A cool little thing is obviously Aaron Taylor Johnson's no new person. If you really watched movies, he was in Kick-Ass. He was in he was actually just recently in Tenet too. Not a star, but he was actually in it quite a bit. But he was also he played Pietro or Quicksilver in Age of Ultron. Unfortunately, his character died unceremoniously. Thank you, Joss Whedon. But he's in that one. Pretty awesome as well. And he's in this one. He plays the main human character in this movie. His wife, played by Elizabeth Olsen. Reason I brought that up is because they were brother and sisters in one franchise and they're married in another franchise. Seems really weird. Plus, it was like right off the fucking like cusp of that, so pretty cool that way as well. You also have Ken Watanabe, who is shouldn't be a known name. I think most people do. He was in he played he was in Batman Begins. He was also in which one was he in as the other Christopher Nolan movies? Inception. He was in Inception. It's like, which one is it? It's Inception. He was in that one. He was the bankroll guy who basically helped form the team, and they were using him in that one, so it's pretty cool. Plus, he was in Last Samurai, a bunch of other stuff too. Can't think of what it is right now. And then this also has Sally Hawkins, who is also in the second one, along with Ken Watanabe. And the only other the only other returning character besides Godzilla is a character named or an actor who goes by the name of David Stratham, who is a character named Admiral William Stentz, who is featured in Godzilla and then shows up a couple scenes and makes some really bad choices in the second one. I mean, he's acting on, normal, let's protect everybody, but not a great idea. So, I think that's really it for Godzilla. I'm not going to be talking about too much of the movies themselves. Godzilla fights a creature they refer to as MUTOs in this movie, which essentially is an acronym for Massive Unidentified Terrestrial Organism. Essentially, they are unnamed creatures that are the focal points and basically the adversary to Godzilla in the first movie. So, cool and all. Let's see. Godzilla King of the Monsters, directed by Michael Daughtry. Michael Daughtry has been talked about on this podcast before twice now. Trick or Treat being one of them, and Krampus being another one, because he's awesome and he makes awesome shit, and I like him a lot. He has unfortunately been involved in some stinkers. He wrote X2, not one of the stinkers. This is a good movie, actually. He wrote the script for Urban Legends Bloody Mary, which I don't think I ever saw that one, in 2005. Wrote the script for Superman Returns, which does have its issues, but is actually a pretty good movie. His movie that he wrote, directed, and executive produced, and I think he did editing on it too, if I'm not mistaken. But he created it, called Trick or Treat. It's an anthology movie I talked about on here before. Of course, Krampus, which he wrote, directed, produced. Again, I think he edited that too. I could be wrong. I could look it up and look at it, but I'm not gonna. Just know he did those three things, and I think he did editing on it too, which I talked about during Christmas time. Or does it? Yeah. Yes, non-traditional Christmas movies. I believe I talked about Krampus, right? Did I talk about Krampus? It's been a whirlwind of a bunch of months now. I don't remember if I talked about Krampus at all. I might not have. I know I watched it during Christmas time because Paige and I watched it. Not too sure if I actually talked about it here at all. If I did, I did. If I didn't, I'm sorry, I didn't. Maybe I'll do it another time. I'll have to look for and see if I did it. Then he had story ideas in X-Men Apocalypse, which unfortunately was a terrible fucking movie with a horrendous version of Apocalypse, and they shouldn't have used his name in it because it would have been cooler if you just kind of left that out. But you knew he was in it, but he was unfortunately looked like a shitty version of Apocalypse. He also looked like, what's his name? Ooze from, not Ooze, what is his name? From the Power Rangers movie. Anyhow. And then, of course, he co-wrote and he directed Godzilla King of Monsters, and then he is story elements and co-writing, I guess, story parts of Godzilla vs. Kong, which I think is literally just because it's based on his movie he did, and he led into Godzilla vs. Kong, which I'll get to in a little bit here. Yeah, that's it for Michael Daughtry. He's amazing too, and I hope he does more things here in the future because he's amazing. Well, I should say this. He is right now developing Hellraiser television show for HBO, which is I think one of the reasons he wasn't moving forward on Godzilla vs. Kong. I think his plate was too full on other things. But I do know he's doing that. So that's pretty cool. And hopefully that actually happens. He's got a lot of people, a lot of star power behind it. We don't know who was in it just yet. But I do know there's a lot of people involved. David Gordon Green is executive producing it with, or is he just? He might just be directing it. He might be directing some episodes. I can't remember if I think he's part of the. Oh no, he's not. No, I'm sorry. It's right here in front of me. Executive producing list is Danny McBride, Jody Hill, Brandon James, and Roy Lee of Vertigo Entertainment, who's worked with Mike on other things, I believe. But David Gordon Green, Mike Daughtry, and Mark Verheiden, I don't know how to say his name. They're directing episodes of the show itself. So hopefully that's going to be good. I know there's also a Hulu series based on some other work around. I don't know if it has Hellraiser. I don't know if it has the Cenobites in it. But I do know it's the Book of Blood, which is the book of short stories, I believe, that actually has the first appearance of them in it. But then there's a main book that has, stuff in it as well. Anyways, that's for another day. But yeah, he's doing that too, so that's pretty cool. Anyhow, so who's in Godzilla King of the Monsters besides Godzilla? Well, there's a lot of monsters in it actually, which I'll go into a little bit when I start talking about that one as well. I talked a little bit about Godzilla. So super long list of people who are in this movie. So I'm gonna rapid fire through them real quick. Kyle Chandler. You have Vera Farmiga, I think is how you say it, or Farmiga. I'm not too sure actually how you say her name. You have Millie Bobby Brown. You have Bradley Whitford. You have Sally Hawkins is returning. You have Charles Dance of Game of Thrones fame, as well as Last Action Hero fame. You have Thomas Middleditch of Silicon Valley fame, as well as Search Party, I believe, is the movie he did. That was pretty funny as well. You have Aisha Hines, who, if I remember correctly, I have her up here too, was Harriet Tubman. That's what it was. She played Harriet Tubman in the WGN America period drama Underground, as well as she's currently in 911 on Fox. She's pretty cool in everything I've seen. She was in True Blood. I know that. I want to say, she's The Shield and Under the Dome. What are the other ones I knew her from? Also in this movie, you have O'Shea Jackson Jr., who plays Jackson Barnes. O'Shea Jackson Jr. is Ice Cube, the rapper Ice Cube, his son. He also played Ice Cube in the Straight Outta Compton movie. He played his dad in that movie. It's pretty cool. You have returning again. You have David Stratham returning as Admiral William Stentz. You have Ken Watanabe, of course, returning as Dr. Ishiro Shirazawa, or Shirazawa. I'm not too sure how to say that, even though I just literally watched the movie. And then you have Zhang Z. I think I'm terrible with names just in general, even like just English names, let alone, foreign names. But she is, to me, or well, not to me, but I always remember her because she was in Hero with Jet Li, as well as House of Flying Daggers, which is an amazing movie. She was in Rush Hour 2 as well. She's in Memoirs of a Geisha, the remake. Is that considered a remake? Adaptation? Readaptation? I don't know. Adaptation of Memoirs of a Geisha, as well as being in a bunch of other stuff that I've never actually seen before. She was in Cloverfield Paradox, so I'd mention that, which is funny because she's also in this movie as well, which is hilarious that she brought up again. She's done a lot of different movies, a lot of them in Japanese, so I do not know. Her American movies are not very very vast. The ones I know of, American movies, mind you, are Cloverfield Paradox, Godzilla King of Monsters, and Godzilla vs. Kong. So I know she plays twins in Godzilla King of Monsters. I don't know if she plays them again or if one of them shows up in this particular movie or in the newest one. But I know she plays twins, which are loosely based on the Mothra twins from the lore of Godzilla itself, which is, of course, a thing that happens. So yeah, that's her. I don't know too much of her work outside of these, because I don't know. I've never really seen. I mean, I saw Hero, I saw House of Flying Daggers, and I've seen Rush Hour 2. I don't know if I could say I know right off the top. I think she's the main chick that's in that movie, but I could be wrong. I don't know. Whatever. She's been in a lot of movies, and she's pretty awesome. Returning in a way, not so much from Godzilla, but from Kong Skull Island as a character. That character is actually played by Joe Morton in this movie, and in the first appearance in Kong Skull Island, he was played by Corey Hawkins, and he plays a character named Dr. Houston Brooks. He makes a cameo. Not a cameo. He has a small role in this one, and if you didn't know, I didn't know. He is the same guy from those two movies, but I believe he's also in the upcoming third movie, so that's cool too. So Joe Morton's awesome. Joe Morton's from Eureka, the TV show, not the puppet one, but the Sci-Fi Channel one. He was also just in. He was not just in Justice League. He was in theatrical release of Justice League, but then he was just also in Justice League, the Snyder cut of Justice League that just came out recently on HBO Max as well, which you should all watch. And if you want to hear about that, part 1 of our discussion on the main podcast was last week. This week coming up is part 2, which we'll talk about some other stuff, but we'll talk about that as well. Mainly probably that, because that's how it is. And that is going to be this coming Friday's episode of the main podcast, where Joe and Mike and I talk about, finally, as a group, can talk fully about it, because Mike hadn't watched it by the time we recorded last week, so that's pretty cool. But anyhow, tune into that if you want to check it out and hear more about that. But anyhow, back to this here movie. So, Godzilla King of Monsters is obviously a direct setup for Godzilla vs. Kong for 2 reasons. One is that at the end of the movie they tease it in the credits. And Kong is shown in footage in this movie, as well as Skull Island is name dropped and on a map because it's a Monarch facility there, which is probably going to be more explored in this new one because, well, Monarch has a lot to do with it and things like that. So we'll learn more about that when we see Godzilla vs. Kong. But in this particular movie, Monarch has basically, from the events of the first Godzilla movie in 2014, the one with Aaron Taylor Johnson and Bryan Cranston and all that fun stuff, after he defeated the Mutos, he essentially went back into the ocean. Spoiler for the first one if you didn't know. Spoiler alert on all these. But in the first one, he defeats the Mutos, slinks back into the water after taking a small nap because he was tuckered out. This movie takes place, I want to say it's 5 years. Is it 5 years? I want to say it's 5 years after the events of Godzilla. They name drop. They mention it in there, so I'm pretty sure it's 5 years. Because they say it a couple times from then. So I think it's roughly the time frame, which is funny because that's how long it's been between the release of the movies, 2014, 2019. That's 5 years, which is pretty cool. But anyhow, so basically, after that, Monarch as an organization has basically worked with the military in a way, but also not in a way, because they have these facilities that are unknown to the U.S. government and the world governments, really, that they've built on sites where they have discovered new titans. And as of the movie, they say there's 17, not counting Godzilla, they have found, which is a terrifying thought. So, I mean, it's just, it's a lot. You know, there's a lot of monsters. Not all as big as Godzilla. Some actually bigger than Godzilla. Well, one in particular bigger than Godzilla. But I digress. The monsters shown in this movie, there's quite a few of them. They really, you have, of the main monsters that they give names in the movie, you have Godzilla, besides Kong, because he's not really in this movie. You have Godzilla, you have King Ghidorah, or Ghidorah as he's known, and then later nicknamed King, which is then obviously the crown is taken by the real King of Monsters. You have Rodan, which is the giant pterodactyl, and then you have Mothra, which is a giant moth, not a really clever name. Neither is Godzilla, because he's like a big lizard, but, you know, whatever. Cool name, though. And Ghidorah is a giant three-headed, not now, has always been, a giant three-headed space dragon, which is pretty terrifying. Shoots yellow electricity, causes storms and tropical storm. Well, not really. It's tropical because it rains everywhere, but like just giant storms that he causes around him, causes damage and charges him up probably because there's yellow lightning outside of him in the storm itself. So somehow he creates those, and it's pretty fucking terrifying. There's a scene where you see him and he's flying, and you see the silhouette of him as the yellow lightning lights up behind him, and it's just this massive wingspan, these 3 undulating heads and 2 tails, 2 spiky tails, and it's just like, nah, bro, I'm done. Can we go like somewhere else? Because like we're flying towards this thing. It's bad news. Anyhow, the premise of this movie is a bunch of scientists within Monarch, one being played by Vera Farmiga. I don't know how to say her name. Anyways, her character, Dr. Emma Russell, loses a son 5 years ago during the devastation in San Francisco, where she's living with at the time with her husband, played by Kyle Chandler, Dr. Mark Russell, who is now her ex-husband, I should say. They have kind of fallen away because they were working for Monarch when San Francisco happened. Their son was killed in the ensuing chaos that is Godzilla and things like that. And so, the fight between Godzilla and the Mutos. And so he has this disdain for Godzilla. She has this also disdain for him, but her outlook is a little different now. And then their daughter, who survived with them, played by Millie Bobby Brown, they have formed this plan with these offshoot of these eco-terrorists led by Charles Dance, who she has created this machine along with her husband, who he thought they destroyed the prototype. She rebuilt and made a new one. It's called the Orca, and the idea behind it is it recreates a sound that is supposed to communicate and hopefully help them control or obeyed the attacks of these giant titans. But her idea, along with the Charles Vance group, is to release some of the titans so they fight and kind of reset the balance of Earth using the radiation they give off, as well as just the devastation they do because of all the changes that the environment has gone through since the battle in San Francisco. Because at one point there's a news thing that says there's a rainforest that popped up in San Francisco because of the battle there, and they show that it's still devastated and has not recovered its very well from the battle 5 years ago. Which, if you watch the first movie, you understand. Duh, because that shit is ridiculous. What happens in that city, and then in this one, Boston gets fucking destroyed completely, literally just leveled. And so they use this to then awaken Ghidorah, who then awakens all the other Titans that they know of, and they all start basically converging with him, wreaking havoc. The humans have to work with Godzilla to basically destroy them, and they do, and all sorts of other things happen. But that's the movie, and at the end of it, Godzilla wins. He beats Ghidorah, so spoiler alert. Unfortunately, Mothra does look she dies, but does she really die, or she's kind of get fucked up and has to regenerate? Not too sure. And again, don't know how long it's been between Godzilla King of Monsters and Godzilla vs. Kong, but I do know that it has been 40 years since the events of Kong Skull Island, because that was set in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken. To now, it's been 40 years, or over 40 years, really. And I will know, I think next week, because I actually tell you I could probably look it up, the date of that one. I know it's in the 70s, I want to say. Could be in the 80s, but I think it's in the 70s. But anyways, basically 40-something years since we saw Kong last in this world. But they've been keeping track of him, and because there was a Monarch base there, which is probably playing into some of the stuff that happens in this movie. But that's where it's at. It's pretty cool. Anyhow, that's it for this week's episode. I did run a little long. I was trying to cram in, again, 2 movies. Next week will be a little bit normal because I have 1 movie to talk about. But yeah, so check out Godzilla and Godzilla King of Monsters. Right now, if you have HBO Max, you can watch Godzilla. You can watch Godzilla King of Monsters and Kong Skull Island on there. Godzilla's not on there for whatever reason. It's got to be like a licensing thing through somebody else, but it is there. Yeah, that's it. Talk to you next week. That's it for this week's episode of The Awesome C.O.D.Y. I've been your host, C.O.D.Y. And as usual, let's be awesome.